Nearly 250,000 Syrians have fled their homes in recent weeks as government bombs and mortar shells have begun targeting heavily populated areas. Last week, amateur video on a social website, which could not be independently verified, purported to show the aftermath of attacks on the town of Daraa. This week, government raids struck Syria's largest city, Aleppo. Burying the victims is challenging authorities, as estimates of the death toll top 4,000 for August, the worst month since an opposition uprising began in March of last year. As fighting rages, United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon told the General Assembly civilians are increasingly the victims as the conflict takes what he called a particularly brutal turn.
Syrian government forces continue indiscriminate shelling of densely populated areas with heavy weapons, tanks, and air assets. Opposition groups have stepped up military activity. Civilians bear the brunt of the violence.
Many experts see the increase in civilian casualties as a sign the government of President Bashar al-Assad is growing desperate. The director of Arab politics at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, David Schenker, says the bombing campaign is a last-ditch attempt to undermine rebel morale and end the revolt.
It's a scorched earth policy. Bashar al-Assad, the regime, understands that it cannot negotiate its way out of the problem.
Schenker says the tactical switch to targeting civilian areas will complicate efforts to rebuild Syria's religiously diverse society.
And this is going to be a shattered society. This is a society that had a history of religious coexistence, of the 74% Sunni population getting along with the Druze, with the Christians, with the Alawites. That's going to be really hard to put this sort of ethnic mosaic back together.
Syria's top government spokesman maintained a hard line this week. Spokesman Oman al-Zubi told a news conference the armed opposition is unfit for negotiations. He described them as foreign agents. Al-Zubi rejected suggestions that the government's bombing campaign is forcing civilians to flee and said they are welcome back anytime.
The
Syrian government did not and will never kick anyone out. The government will never accept that anyone has to live outside the country.
The head of the International Committee of the Red Cross visited Damascus this week to secure permission to monitor the conflict. President Assad was reported to have told him the ICRC could operate in Syria as long as it remains neutral. Peter Heinlein, VOA News, Washington.